Now today, you're part of a truly remarkable global phenomenon. Around the world, thousands of people have been gathering meetings to experience the power of ideas. The surprising thing about today's meeting is that we here at TED have had almost nothing to do with it. We lent our name, our format, a few simple guidelines, and some of our content. But the really hard work to make today happen has been down to your local organisers. And we're truly in awe at the passion and dedication they have shown to make something like this work. A thank you to you too for taking the time out to come and be part of this exciting conversation about our shared future. Now please write and tell us what you make of the event today. But for now, on with the show.
First and foremost, Assalamu alaikum. And I would like to apologize for the delay, and I would like to apologize for my voice. I lost it gradually trying to launch this event. I want to start by telling you a story. 4 years ago, when the founder of TEDxYouth, TheNile, Ibrahim Qazzaz, founded this event in a small room with 300 people in school, he founded this event with the intention of trying to create a platform for Egyptian youth to launch their ideas. And I'm proud to say that these are the same intentions and morals that we carry till this very day. We do this, we launch this event to help Egyptian youth, to help you guys launch and spread and inspire people with your ideas. This year's theme is untypical multiple intelligence. And we chose multiple intelligence because the world is action. And look, one lens, there's so much you cannot see. And we are here to help you see, help make you see what you have not yet seen. I'd like to thank our sponsors, our main organizer, Higher International Academy, our main sponsor, Pepsi, and the other sponsors, Saudi Culture and Rich Day. And I would like to introduce our first host, Salman Magharbi.
First session of TEDxYouth TheNile 2014. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you all to please kindly shut off your cell phones, and if you need to take a phone call, please do so outside. In the first session. Our first speaker, Omar Nabil, has been playing music for only 2 years. He is contagiously passionate and incredibly talented. Please help me welcome to the stage Omar Nabil.
I'm the hometown of a great hero and a mischievous villain, Batman and the Joker. I mention them because their relationship is like my relationship to music. We complete each other, but at the same time, we can cause each other issues. I'm going to start out by talking about how music was a friend to me. It all helped me throughout my life. I'm Gotham City. I'm the hometown of a great hero and a mischievous villain, Batman and the Joker. I mention them in my talk because they complete each other, just like how music completes me. They could also cause each other issues, which are set out to Gotham, just like how music can bring me issues. But first of all, I'm going to start talking about how music was a friend to me and how it helped me throughout my life. Music played a humongous role for me. Back
About 4 years ago, in grade 8, I was sort of suffering due to loneliness because I had no friends and I used to sit alone during school days and do nothing. All I do with my life was put my headphones in and just sit back and relax. I did basically your average loner would do. Sit around, talk to no one, I wouldn't go out, and I was boring. One day, I was listening to music and I was blasting Pink Floyd in my headphones. I was walking down the hallway after school, and my friend that I barely knew anything about walked past me. She stopped me and said, "Hey, you actually listen to that band?" And at that moment, we just had a bond, just like that. We clicked. We understood each other on sort of a spiritual level. Because when two people who listen to the same type of music meet each other and actually interact, their bond grows in a very strange way, but a good way. You have two people who understand each other's issues and understand each other's traumas, the things they go through. You understand each other, and that's something that's unbreakable. When you try to break that bond, it's not going to work. She helped me change myself, and so did music. I went from being an introvert to an extrovert in about 2 months. I went from having no friends and not going out at all to going out every weekend with new friends from outside of school and inside of school. I started to mix with people, bond with them, have tighter bonds, just be happy. I had a joyful life and I was alive. And I have to thank music for that, and my friends. But with all that, I grew an appreciation for music. And with that appreciation, I grew a passion. I wanted to learn guitar. I wanted to have to do something with music. I wanted to make people feel the way I felt when I listened to music, happy and understood. So I went out and I learned guitar. And then when I did that, my dream came. My dream to become a guitarist and to have a happy life where I share my thoughts with people and they understand them came in. But with that dream, music slowly became my enemy. See, it's kind of how when you have an amazing dream, a utopian dream, you have something that you think about every single day, you're passionate with your life, and then you're opposed for it. People tell you you can't do it. You'll never be able to do it because it's not a job that's worth doing. You won't make money. You won't live a happy life. You won't live a life worth living. But what they don't understand, this is your passion. This is what you want to do with your life. This is what you want to spend your life doing. We as people criticize others without thinking first. Like some people say, shoot first, ask questions later. Humanity usually does that, but the issue with that is when people criticize others, it hurts them, and they don't notice. What you should do is you should rise above the criticism given to you. You should go above that. And you should think about it. You should consider all the things that you could have done with your life instead of throwing it away. Because your passion is what you want. Don't just listen to someone's criticism and take it in and let it hurt you. Rise above it. Do something about it. If they don't like it, then maybe try to work it through your way. making them like it in a way where both you're happy and they're happy. That's when I kind of took a turn in my life, when I realized that. My father started to share things with me. We started to share sort of a bond with music. He shared some of his interests with me, old school music, which I didn't really like that much. But still, I started to enjoy it. I started to like sitting down with him and listening to music, sharing something. It felt more natural to have someone that's actually a family member share something with me that's my. I started to listen to it more. And I started to adapt to it. My music I wrote myself, changed and formed around it. I took the genre that I like to play, which would be hardcore alternative music, and the genre he likes to listen to, which is more of an old school rock 80s, and I mixed them together. And I wrote my own songs. I wrote my own album. Wrote it in 2 hours when I felt really passionate about what I was doing. The album is called Dream. I named it Dream not because I want to sound cliche, but because I want to show people that you can do whatever you want to do without having others criticize you, without having others tell you that this isn't good, that this isn't a good thing you're doing, that you won't get anywhere with life. I named the album Dream because it was my dream. It was what I wanted to do with my life. Or it was what made me happy. And that is the most thing that matters at the end of the day. I'm going to end this talk by playing a song that I wrote called Reverence. And before I go, I'm going to ask you that you should all think about. Is what you're doing with your life right now to be doing? Or are you just playing the game that you don't want to be playing?
Music truly can bridge incredible relationships. Our next speaker, however, found another way to cope with whatever life threw at her. She is a law student who is pragmatic as she is intense. Please welcome Sarah Kemp.
Do you guys hear me clearly? Okay. Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. And I know the look on your faces عشان أنا كنت من 3-4 أسابيع نفس المنظر ده لما عرفته. بس I swear أنا فاهمة كل حاجة. دلوقتي من كام أسبوع فاتوا حضرت سيشن عن presentation skills. ولد اسمه عبد الرحمن سكر قال حتة السيشن عن the 4 phases of competence. المراحل الأربعة للكفر. بمعنى ان ده المقياس اللي حطه سايكايترست اسمه ماسلو عن ازاي الواحد بيقيس نفسه من A to Z في قد ايه هو بيعرف يعمل حاجه صح. الفكره في الموضوع ان هو علشان الناس ما بتعرفش حاجه زي دي فالعمليه دي بنعدي بيها كل يوم محدش يعرف هي ايه، محدش يعرف ان ده اصلا احنا بنعمله من غير ما ناخد بالنا. بس الناس لما بتعرف حاجه زي كده بتقدر تفهم قد ايه هي قد ايه هي كومبتنت على اساس الحاجه اللي هي بتعملها. وانا صغيره اللي خلاني ابدا كتابه ان ناس كتير في المدرسه كانوا بيضايقوني وما كنتش بعرف ارد عليهم. وكانوا دايما بيبقوا كويسين جدا ان هم يعرفوا يجيبوا كلام انا ما اعرفش ارد عليه وما يتمسكش ضدهم. فبالتالي ما كنتش بعرف اروح اشتكي لحد. فكنت بروح البيت اقعد اكتب قصيده شعر فيها شتايم بس يعني تاذيهم بطريقه ما ان هي تضايقهم او ان انا لما اقراها قدامهم يحسوا ان هو اترد عليهم بطريقه قويه وفي نفس الوقت انا خدت حقي. كنت بكتب الحاجات دي في البيت واروح المدرسه سواء كانت في الباص او المدرسه والعيال كلها تتلم حواليا واقعد اقول الحاجه اللي انا كتبتها في البيت ويبقوا الناس اللي مضايقني سامعينها وعارفين كويس جدا ان هي عنهم. بعيدا عن فكره ان هم ممكن يكونوا كانوا بيروحوا معيطين وان انا خدت حقي، فكره في الاخر ان انا عرفت اعبر عن نفسي بطريقه الناس ما كانتش بتعبر عن نفسها بيها ساعتها. اهلي شافوا الموضوع ده ان هو حاجه كويسه، ازاي واحده في ابتدائي بتكتب شعر متناسق مع بعضه وعارفه تعبر بيه عن نفسها بالمنظر ده. صحابي على الناحيه الثانيه بقوا بيبصوا لي ان انا البنت اللي عارفه تتكلم ليهم كلهم وان انا عارفه اسمع صوتهم لاكبر عدد ممكن من الناس. وده خلاني ان انا اعرف اكمل في مسيره الكتابه وافضل بكتب واتمرن على اللي انا عايزه اعمله في حياتي علشان اوصل لمرحله ان لما حد يقرا الحاجه اللي انا بكتبها توصل له بنفس المستوى اللي انا عايزه اوصلها له. بدات بعد الشعر العربي اكتب بالانجلش شويه واكتب مقالات بالعربي بس كان اغلبيتهم مقالات بالانجلش. فكرة انا وصلت لمرحله ان انا شايفه ان انا اعرف كل حاجه عن الكتابه. ده كان عدم ادراكي بعدم كفؤي على مستوى اللاوعي. عارفه ان كلام معقد ركزوا معايا. الفكره في الموضوع ان ده الانكونشس انكومبتنس. الانكونشس انكومبتنس هو ده بالظبط اللي انت ما تعرفوش عن اللي انت ما تعرفوش. يعني لو انت مش عارف انت ناقصك ايه هتفضل في المرحله دي مش هتعرف انت فايتك ايه او انت محتاج تحسنه ازاي. بعد الفتره دي جات لي فرصه ان انا اخد كورسز كريتيف رايتنج واكتشفت اني ما اعرفش اي حاجه عن الكتابه. بقى في تكنيك وبقى في ستايلز ان انا لازم اكتب الباراجراف ان انا لازم احطهم بشكل معين عشان اطلع مقال عن بحث او اطلع مقال اقناع. الموضوع كان مختلف تماما وانا ما كنتش اعرف ده. نفس اللحظه اللي عرفت فيها الموضوع ده كان الكونشس انكومبتنس، عدم كفؤي على مستوى الوعي. ان انا دلوقتي عارفه ايه اللي ناقصني وبدات احسن نفسي على اساسه. في الفترة دي قررت إن أنا أقدم أبقى كاتبة في انستا، واتقبلت وبقيت رايتر هناك، وبقى بينزل لي حاجات، وأول مقال نزل لي كان أكتر حاجة أنا ممكن أكون فرحانة بيها لحد دلوقتي أنا وأهلي. بس كان على الناحية التانية من الفرحة دي كلها كان جدي. جدي طلب نفس المجلة اللي نزل فيها أول أرتكل ليا، وقال لي تكتبي لي إملاء عليها، وفضل شايل المجلة دي معايا. ولسه لغايه دلوقتي فاكره هو بص لي ازاي، وازاي فضل يقول لي ان هو فخور بيا، وان انا في يوم من الايام هخلي اسم العيله ده بدل ما هو اسمه بيغير فكر ناس. في المرحله دي بعد ما كنت اخدت كريتيف رايتنج كورس وعرفت التكنيكس والستايل اللي انا المفروض امشي عليها، بقيت بحط الورق جنبي على المكتب وبفضل اتمرن على نفس الحاجه اللي انا اخدتها في الكورس عشان اقدر اطلع المستوى اللي انا عايزاه في الكتابه. كنت عايزه ان انا ابقى كفء في الكتابه بطريقه تخليني ارضي نفسي وارضي الفكره في الموضوع ان بعد ما وصلت اصحابي مستوى كفء على مستوى الوعي بالانس ان انا اعمل ايه بس زياده. كله بقى تمام، كله ظبط، وبقيت بكتب وانا بتفرج على عايزاه، او انا بسمع ميوزك بقعد اكتب التكنيكس اللي انا عايزاها، وكله طلع حلو. ده كان الانكونشس كومبتنس. الانكونشس كومبتنس اللي هو مستوى كفء على اللاوعي، زي ما حد بقاله بيسوق سنتين بيقدر ياكل، بيقدر يشرب، بيقدر يعمل اي حاجه وهو بيسوق وهو مش واخد باله او مركز في السواقه عشان هو اتعود على ده. الفكره في الموضوع ان بعد ما كل ده المراحل دي خلصت، وصلت اللي انا عايزه اوصل له، وحققت حاجات كتير في حياتي، انا ما كنتش راضيه باللي انا بعمله. ما كنتش حاسه ان مستوى رضاي عن نفسي بنفس مستوى كفري، مع ان كان عندي كل حاجه انا عايزاها. ليه؟ علشان انا اول ما عملت كل الحاجات دي وحققتها في حياتي، كان الشخصيه الوحيده اللي عايزه اجري عليها واقول لها على كل ده كان جدي. بس جدي ساعتها كان متوفي بقاله سنتين، وفضل شايل اول عدد نزلت فيه كرايتي في مجله تيكست تحت مكان السرير لحد ما توفى. طيب فين المشكله هنا؟ دلوقتي انا عندي كفء بس انا ما عنديش رضا، مع ان الامر الواقع ان الناس كلها تفتكر ان الاثنين بيمشوا مع بعض، بس هما في حالتي ما مشيوش مع بعض. وده اللي انا كنت محتاجه اعرفه. ليه حصل دروب ما بين الاثنين؟ ليه حصل ان ده عالي وده لا؟ لغايه ما اكتشفت ان انا كل اللي عملته ان السنين اللي فاتت دي كلها كنت معتمده على مستوى رضا جدي عشان اخد رضايا. اللي بالنسبه لي رضاه وفخره بيا كان هو ده اللي بيديني رضا عن نفسي. ودي كانت غلطه في اني خليت الرضا بتاعي متاسس على رضا حد تاني. مهما كان الحد التاني ده قد ايه عزيز عليا او قد ايه قريب مني، ما ينفعش ان انا اعمل كده. وما ينفعش اي حد يعمل كده. فضلت فتره كبيره جدا من حياتي مش راضيه باللي انا بعمله، وفضلت فتره كبيره قاعده بحاول ازاي ارضي نفسي قبل ما ارضي اي حد تاني، او ازاي اعتمد على رضايا بنفسي او تقديري لنفسي مش تقدير حد تاني ليا، مهما كان الشخصيه دي قريبه قد ايه ومهما كان رايها مهم. الفكره ان انا حبيت جدي بزياده بطريقه خلتني ان انا اعتمد دايما على رضاه بيا عن رضايا بنفسي. لغايه السنتين اللي فاتوا دول علموني حاجه او كذا حاجه. حاجه منهم ان انا لازم اقدر كل مراحل التعليم بفشلي ونجاحي فيها، بكل حاجه اتعلمتها وبعملها، وكل حاجه بتعلمها، وكل حاجه عايشه طول عمري هتعلمها. حاجه كمان ان كل الناس مراحل تعليمها واحده، كلنا بنعدي على اربع مراحل دي، بس الفكره ان مش كلنا بنبقى واقفين في نفس المرحله، ومش كلنا بنتعلم نفس الحاجه، ومش كلنا هنتعلمها بنفس الطريقه. اخر حاجه اتعلمتها ان الموضوع كله ان رضايا بيجي مني اولا، ورضا اي حد تاني بيبقى زياده عليه وبيزود من حلاوته، ونقصه مش معناها عدمه او يعني امحائه، مش معناه ان هو مش موجود. رضاي بيجي مني، ورضا اي حد بيجي من نفسه. ما ينفعش اعتمد على حد سواء كان اهله مهما حاول يرضيهم، لازم يعتمد على رضاه بنفسه وتقديره لنفسه واحساسه بالرضا ناحيه اللي هو بيعمله، مهما كان الموضوع ده عامل ازاي، مهما كان صعب ازاي، ومهما الناس فضلت تضغط عليه ان هو لازم يديهم الاول. الفكره في الاخر ان رضا جدي عني ده خلاني احقق طموحي، وهفضل احقق طموحي بيه عشاني وعشان اهلي، وبرضه في الاخر عشان جدي. شكرا.
passionate about broadening horizons and breaking down walls. She has done what many of us believe to be the impossible. Please help me welcome to the stage, Mira. Mira will be out in about 2 minutes. Sorry for the delay.
大家好，我今天要介绍一个非常重要的题目，那个题目是独有数字。那很重要，因为有两个问题，那有很多人有这个问题，也很多人不知道它是什么问题。Now let me tell you, you know what you just felt right now? Not knowing what I was saying? That's exactly what I felt around 1 year ago, on August 28th, when I went to China. I was in the airport in China, but I had no idea anything about the Chinese language. I didn't know a single word, but everyone around me, they all spoke fluent Chinese. And what they said to me was gibberish. I didn't understand a single thing. And so everyone around me, when they looked uncomfortable I was, everyone mocked me. They looked at me and they said, like, who is she or what is she doing here? She looks so weird. And so the next day after I arrived in China, I had to go and meet my new host family that I was going to be staying with for 1 year. Okay, and so that family, they knew very little Chinese, and I didn't know how I was going to communicate with them. The good thing was that they spoke a little bit of English. I had my host sister, but she was my only link to everyone around me. She was the only one who spoke English, and she was the only link that I have to all the Chinese people. And so the next day after I moved in with them, I had to go, and I was very excited. I wanted to explore the country. And so I went and I knocked on her door, and she didn't answer. I knocked several times after that, but she didn't answer. I didn't know what to do. I opened the door, and she wasn't there. I was shocked, and I really did not know what I was going to do for the rest of the year, because she's the only person that I can talk to, and she's the only person that I know. And so I sat in my room for the entire day until around 10 p.m., hungry and not knowing how to even tell my host mom that I want food, just because I lack that language. And so as soon as before my host sister comes, I was thinking about the decision that I made, and I was thinking about whether I was actually capable of doing that, and whether I was actually able to speak Chinese by the end of that year. And so, when I was sitting there in my room and thinking about the year that I was in, I thought, this is a huge obstacle, and how am I going to go over it? How am I going to get through it? And what I thought was, I remembered the reason that I came here. I remembered that my only motive and the only reason that I wanted to come to this place is to learn Chinese, because that's what I'm passionate about, and that's my love for languages. And so I felt that this obstacle was not a drawback, but actually it was a push forward. And it helped me understand that I need to know more of the language, and I need to know how to express myself a lot more. And so around 2 months after that, I had to move out of that family and move into a new one. But the problem was, they knew even less English. And I had a little bit of Chinese. And this is my second host family. And so I knew even less Chinese, but my host sister knew even less English. And I went to that family, but they told me about a Chinese custom that as soon as you enter the house, you have to take off your shoes. And so I was walking around the house with my socks on. And so the next day after I woke up, my family told me that I was going to school. And so I got my uniform on and everything, and I was going down the stairs. I was halfway down until I found myself slipping, and I fell, and I took the second flight of stairs all on my back. It really hurt. But my host mom, she saw that pain in my face, and she really tried to help me. And she asked me one question. She said, "Neo wenti ma?" And that, to me, meant, "Do you have a question?" I looked at her, and she saw the frustration that I had. Why would I have a question as soon as I fell? Did you not see me fall? And she said, and I said, "No, I don't have a question." And she says, "No, but of course you do." And so we stayed in this corral for a while, And when I went to school, I asked my teacher if there's another meaning for the word "wenti," which I thought meant question. And she said, yeah, it means problem. That's when I realized that I really had a problem. My problem was not only that I didn't know the language and that I had a barrier between me and my mother that I was staying with, and I wasn't even able to talk to her and tell her that I was in pain, and that she wasn't even able to help me, even though we were standing in front of each other. And I was illiterate to the Chinese language. Illiteracy to me did not mean that I wasn't able to read and write. It meant that I wasn't able to communicate. It was a major problem, and I didn't know what I was going to be doing about it. But that problem made me able to relate to every single person out there who is illiterate to even the English language or to their own mother tongue. I was illiterate to the Chinese language as they are illiterate to many other languages. We are all illiterate in our own different ways because we might not know about a different culture, about the Chinese culture or the Italian culture, but what we do know is very little compared to what we don't know. So that illiteracy made me aware of so much that I wouldn't be able to know without going to China. Now let me take you back to that very first host family and tell you what I did on my very last day in China. The very last day, on May 29th, which was 9 months later after my first day in China, I called up my host family and asked them if they could meet up. And so they said, yeah. And we went, and on my way there, I had a flashback. I remembered my very first day in China, and I remembered how incapable I felt, how I wasn't even able to tell them that I needed food or good morning. But that day, I was able to talk about politics. I talked to them about the situation in Egypt. I talked to them about the difficulties I faced during that year. I talked to them about every single thing that we could talk about. We even talked about our future plans. And that broke the bond that we had, that broke the barrier between me and that family. And they weren't just my host mom and host sister, but they were mama and nene, which meant mother and younger sister. The barrier and that wall of the Chinese language and miscommunication fell. Thank you.
I know a man who soars above the city every night. In his dreams, he twirls and swirls with his toes kissing the earth. Everything has motion, he claims, even a body as paralyzed as his own. This man is my father. 3 years ago, when I found out that my father had suffered a severe stroke in his brainstem, I walked into his room in the ICU at the Montreal Neurological Institute and found him lying deathly still, tethered to a breathing machine. Paralysis had closed over his body slowly, beginning in his toes and legs, torso, arms. It made its way up his neck, cutting off his ability to breathe, and stopped just beneath the eyes. He never lost consciousness. Rather, he watched from within as his body shut down, limb by limb, muscle by muscle. In that ICU room, I walked up to my father's body, and with a quivering voice and through tears, I began reciting the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. At K, he blinked his eyes. I began again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. He blinked again at the letter I, then at T, then at R, and A. Keitra. He said, Keitra, my beauty, don't cry. This is a blessing. There was no audible voice, but my father called out my name powerfully. Just 72 hours after his stroke, he had already embraced the totality of his condition. Despite his extreme physical state, he was completely present with me, guiding, nurturing, and being my father, if not more than ever before. Locked-in syndrome is many people's worst nightmare. In French, it's sometimes called maladie de l'enrepé vivant, literally locked-in alive disease. For many people, perhaps most, paralysis is an unspeakable horror. But my father's experience, losing every system of his body, was not an experience of feeling trapped, but rather of turning the psyche inwards, dimming down the external chatter, facing the recesses of his own mind, and in that place, falling in love with life and body anew. As a rabbi and spiritual man dangling between mind and body, life and death, the paralysis opened up a new awareness for him. He realized he no longer needed to look beyond the corporeal world in order to find the divine. Paradise is in this body. It's in this world, he said. I slept by my father's side for the first 4 months, tending as much as I could to his every discomfort, understanding the deep human psychological fear of not being able to call out for help. My mother, sisters, brother, and we surrounded him in a cocoon of healing. We became his mouthpiece, spending hours each day reciting the alphabet, as he whispered back sermons and poetry with blinks of his eye. His room, it became our temple of healing. It became a site for those seeking advice and spiritual counsel, and through us, my father was able to speak and uplift, letter by letter, blink by blink. Everything in our world became slow and tender as the din, drama, and death of the hospital ward faded into the background. I want to read to you one of the first scribed in the week following the stroke. He composed a letter addressing his synagogue congregation and ended it with the following lines. When my nape exploded, I entered another dimension, inchoate, subplanetary, protozoan. Universes are opened and closed continually. There are many when look stop growing. Last week, I was brought so low, but I felt the hand of my father around me, and my father brought me back. When we weren't his voice, we were his legs and arms. I moved them like I know I would have wanted my own arms and legs to be moved were they still for all the hours of the day. I remember I pulled his fingers near my face, bending each joint to keep it soft and limber. I'd ask him again and again to visualize the motion, to watch from within as the finger curled and extended, and to move along with it in his mind. Then one day, from the corner of my eye, I saw his body slither like a snake, an involuntary spasm passing through the course of his limbs. At first, I thought it was my own hallucination, having spent so much time tending to this one body, so desperate to see anything react on its own. But he told me he felt tingles, sparks of electricity flickering on and off just beneath the surface of his skin. The following week, he began ever so slightly to show muscle resistance. Connections were being made. Body was slowly and gently reawakening, limb by limb, muscle by muscle, twitch by twitch. As a documentary photographer, I felt the need to photograph each of his first movements like a mother with her newborn. I photographed him taking his first unaided breath, the celebratory moment after he showed muscle resistance for the very first time, the new adaptive technologies that allowed him to gain more and more independence. I photographed the care and the love that surrounded him. But my photographs only told the outside story of a man lying in a hospital bed attached to a breathing machine. I wasn't able to portray his story from within, and so I began to search for a new visual language, one which strived to express the ephemeral quality of his spiritual experience. Finally, I want to share with you a video from a series that I've been working on that tries to express the slow in-between existence that my father has experienced. As he began to regain his ability to breathe, I started recording his thoughts, and so the voice that you hear in this video is his voice.
You have to believe you're paralyzed. Play the part of a quadriplegic. I don't. In my mind and in my dreams, every night I see tall man float over the city, twirl and swirl with my toes, kissing the floor. I know nothing about the statement of man without motion. Everything I push, the heart pumps, the body heaves, the mouth moves. We never stagnate. Life triumphs up and down.
For most of us, our muscles begin to twitch and move long before we are conscious. But my father tells me his privilege is living on the far periphery of the human experience. Like an astronaut who sees a perspective that very few of us will ever get to share, he wonders and watches as he takes his first breath and dreams about crawling back home. So begins life at 57, he says. A toddler has no attitude in its being, but a man insists on his world every day. Few of us will ever have to face physical limitations to the degree that my father has, but we will all have moments of paralysis in our lives. I know I frequently confront walls that feel completely unscalable, but my father insists that there are no dead ends. Instead, he invites me into his space of co-healing, to give the very best of myself and for him to give the very best of himself to me. Paralysis was an opening for him. It was an opportunity to emerge, to rekindle life force, to sit still long enough with himself so as to fall in love with the full continuum of creation. Today, my father is no longer locked in. He moves his neck with ease, has had his feeding pipe removed, breathes with his own lungs, speaks slowly with his own quiet voice, and works every day to gain more movement in his paralyzed body. But the work will never be finished, as he says, I'm living in a broken world, and there is holy work to do. Thank you.
Expense people go to break barriers so they are able to communicate art incredible. It just shows how one man did the seemingly impossible just to be able to talk. With that in mind, let's fall back to Mira and hear that Chinese sentence you said in the beginning. Mira.
大家好，我今天要介绍一个非常重要的题目，那个题目是苦语不识字。那很重要，因为很多这个问题，
Please help me welcome to the stage, Aida.
I have been afraid of everything for as long as I can remember. I was born and raised in New York City, a busy town filled with important people. And as I grew up, I always felt like a small girl in the midst of millions, so it didn't really help that I was a scaredy cat too. By age 5, I was terrified of the dark. At age 7, Halloween was one of my least favorite holidays. And at age 12, I was trying to figure out ways to avoid watching horror movies with my friends. But I guess all those things are natural when you're growing up. I mean, we all have things that we find are difficult to overcome. Around October 31st, in the 4th grade, my English teacher gave us an assignment. Write something about Halloween. So naturally, most of the kids wrote about that time they went trick-or-treating or when their parents took them to buy their costume. But what I wrote was a fictional story about a girl who lived across the street from a haunted house. The story, which was double-spaced, with the largest handwriting possible, and my version of impeccable 4th grade grammar and spelling, talked about how the girl was able to overcome her fears and go trick-or-treating at the house. At the end of the lesson, I just handed in my notebook and left. The next morning, my teacher had the room set up in a circle, a clear indication that it was story time. So all the kids ran in, trying to fight for who would get the front row seat. And naturally, I didn't get the front row seat because besides the fact that I was afraid of everything, I was also extremely non-athletic. But anyway, my teacher then proceeded to do something a bit different. Instead of her reading us a story, she handed me my notebook and asked me to read my story to the class. I remember this day clearly because it was the first time I was able to feel comfortable in my own voice. As a 4th grader, it was really exciting to watch the faces of my classmates as they wanted to know what would happen next and urged me to write another chapter to the story. But I think the moment that resonated with me the most, and something that I can remember to this day, is that when after I read my story, my teacher pulled me aside and told me that it had potential. She told me that this idea of a girl overcoming her fears was something she never saw anyone in the class write about before. And that was the experience that started the love affair I have with writing. By the time I was a teenager, I was writing everywhere and about everything. The fight I got with my best friend, my hatred towards math class, or the British boy in my gym class with a really cute accent. And that's when I started to notice a trend. I was always writing about things I was trying to figure out. And as a result of that, I realized I was becoming less scared of the people or situations that once terrified me. And that's because I learned how to share my story. When I was asked to give a TEDx talk here, I was delighted and honored, to say the least. But if I'm being completely honest, I was also quite intimidated. And after weeks and weeks and weeks worth of written drafts, rewritten drafts, trying to piece together the talk that I thought would please the world and capture my love for writing, I arrived at a familiar conclusion. And that is that my passion for writing and I say that that's a familiar, very cool. The lineage of words have crumbled me to the floor in grief. It is those situations that I believe connect me most to those around me. So that brings me to why I'm standing up here today, to urge you all to use writing to share your story. It's a terrifying thing, I know, but I'm not asking you to publish a poem or write a book. I'm asking you to find a way to problems, because I'm sorry to say this, but we are never done growing. Progress can always be made, and we will always change, as are the things we are accustomed to believe. And that's why I write, because to me, it's like a navigation tool. I write because I still have things to figure out. I write because I still have things that scare me. And all that really takes is the willingness to craft your perspective. And trust me, the effects are monumental. Because when you're writing to be mindful of yourself and the person you want to be. So yeah, that's all interesting and intriguing, but the question remains, how do you start? To me, there is only one cardinal rule people need to follow when they write, and that is to always be honest. Through doing so, you are already creating the richest and most honest platform that writers need. Being honest about your experiences, being honest about your fears, being honest about your actions, but most importantly, to be honest. It is only through the self-honesty that we can recognize where we are and what we need to do to progress. So let me try to give you all an example. Let's say I'm writing about somebody who did me wrong. I'll typically write about 3 things. The first is what they did. The second is how it made me feel. And the third and probably most fun part is what I would like to see karma do to them. So yeah, I understand that is a bit brutal, but it's honest. It's what I'm feeling at the time, it's what I'm going through, and it's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, just look around you. Here I am, and here are all these other speakers being incredibly vulnerable, trying to figure out what this whole world means. Through writing and sharing our stories, we can take advantage of that vulnerability. We can take advantage of that risk. So let go of this idea that your writing is supposed to be polished or perfect, because that's not what it's about. It's about creating a connection. It's about figuring out what it means to be human. So I'm imploring you all to use writing to share your story. Break down that wall you use to protect yourself from all the hurt and miseries, because even when you break it down, that means you're going to accept all the beautiful and amazing things that could be coming your way. And personally, I think that's something that none of us should be deprived of. And if it's not clear, I am desperately trying to figure all this out myself. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I would like to share one final story with you that I think shows exactly that. This is a poem I wrote for my best friend. Do not fall in love with too many words. And you know the type that makes your heart drop and your stomach spin. The words that are repeated over and over and over again. Every letter and feel the metaphors so intricately. Cards lost into space, words I said that were never returned, words he said that he never meant. And you see, that is the problem. You cannot mean every word you say. So do not be foolish and think that you can fit them all into one phone call or type them into 140 characters, because that is not what words are about. Words are never ending, but thought out. Whispered when necessary, not often. Said to fill a heart, not a tomb. Your body is not a tomb. It cannot be built out of words, not unless you want shaky foundations, empty rooms, and broken lights. And your body does not deserve that. It does not have room for fumbling, clumsy words that are given out at every breath. Those are not the words that build a strong woman. Those are words that are spat out by cowards who are scared of permanence. So do not be cowardly and walk away from the words you say. Be the person whose words land softly in the only hands of the person they belong to. And if you are the person they belong to, open up your palms to catch them, but don't be surprised when you wind up with cuts and scrapes, because those are okay. And eventually, with time, they'll fade away. Just like the metaphors, just like the love letters, just like the excuses, just like the apologies, and just like their authors. Repeat the same words over and over and over again, and you'll never get closer to believing them yourself. Even I know that. Repeat the same words over and over and over, and you only fall in love with the emptiness that they fill. You only create a tomb and leave room for the ghosts to nestle themselves in. So remember, darling, the words you thought you loved are just ghosts now. And it is because of this that you still keep them alive. Thank you.
We're starting again shortly in 20 minutes. Please be here at around 4:25 so we can start right away. There's a mosque across from the side if anyone wants to.
جرب الأول ماشي وسمعهم دلوقتي لا كله رجل بس بص يعني واحنا بنجرب بقى ممكن في مناطق عليه ماشي ماشي انا كده
بس كده هو الأسرة بس كنت ركبت 16 جنيه وكان 6 ودلوقتي مش راكب وهو 16 جنيه مش راكب من 8 لغايه 15 صح؟ طب هم لو كده اسألهم لو عايزين يجربوا بتاع
All right, please, ladies and gentlemen, please have a seat. We're starting off the second session. Thank you.
ايوه البرامج بتاعتها خلينا الفكره مش شمسيه ولا بتاع خليك تكتب شغل خليها تعمل كده يلا خلاص كده.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please have a seat so we can start the session? Thank you. Those upcoming performers who only had knowledge about guitar only 1 month ago, and now they're performing a new take on Carmen. Please welcome Heda's guitar class. Well, that was amazingly synchronized. Everyone, please give it up one more time for Hayat's guitar partner. Now, the upcoming speakers, when you go on their journey of their brilliant minds, you'll by their extraordinary discoveries. Please give it up for us.
Corruption. Throughout history, presented an implausible dilemma that man has been unable to find a solution for. Too complicated? Let's start off with the sausage theory. For those of you that are unaware of what the sausage theory is, I have a little demonstration for you. We went ahead and placed various items under some of your seats. So would you be kind enough please to look under your seats? Okay, if you have found some lipstick, please raise your hands in the air. Okay, so do you know what you're holding in your hand right now? You are actually holding beetle blood in your hand. I know that's disgusting, but the blood of the insect is actually used in several makeup products in your hand right now. But I think that there's a lot of your faces today. And now, if you found a chocolate bar beneath your seat, please raise your hand in the air. Okay? Before you go ahead and actually eat that, you might want to know that there are actually insect legs in it. And the theme might be recurring, but organizations like the Food and Drug Administration actually allow for a certain percentage of insect legs to be present in their products. Products such as the one you're holding in your hand right now, and products such as one I'm sure a lot of people are addicted to. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is basically what the sausage theory is. The sausage theory states that if you like or love something, do not find out how it's made. And notice how you're all grossed out right now? Well, let me tell you my own story. About 6 years ago, I started really getting into following football, especially watching Arsenal, the best football team on earth. Now, as time changed, I changed from a casual fan into a completely obsessed freak. I came to know every player's name, their nationality, what club they play for, their preferred food, who they like to play with, and anything else. I was insane. It even got to a point where I myself was employed by an international blogging website, writing about anything remotely related to football. But that's beyond the point. Anyways, as my obsession with the sport grew, as I read more books, more blogs, more articles, as I watched more matches, and as I talked to more people, in the end, I came to a hideous conclusion. I came to a conclusion that my passion for the sport had blinded me from for all those years. I came to a conclusion that I wanted to refute with every inch of my existence. I came to a conclusion that the beautiful game of football was as corrupt gets. Now, let's go back to what corruption is. In general, defined as any illegal misuse of trusted power, especially by powerful people. But we all know that that is not correct. We all know that corruption is a much more complex issue. Corruption can appear in all fields of life. It can range from sneaky embezzlement to blatant abuse of power. In fact, corruption is such an ever-present issue that I am quite certain that almost everyone in this room has witnessed some sort of corrupt activity in their life. Now, there are certain examples of ethical corruption in sports that we are all aware of: Armstrong, Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez. These are all athletes that have been proven to have used some sort of performance-enhancing drugs to ensure success. This is the same type of corruption, and we look down on this, and rightly so.
But what if I tell you this is totally not what we're talking about? What if I tell you this is totally not what we're talking about? What if I tell you that we're talking about the unseen forms of corruption? Because corruption is so much more. And that's the whole point. Let me start off with a simple example. The world's largest ever sports event in history, the notorious World Cup. A cup where 32 countries from all over the world get together to play the beautiful game of football. But what happens behind the scenes is everything but beautiful. Let me start off with this year's World Cup, the Brazil 2016 World Cup. A confirmed 8 to 10 people were killed in the midst of building the stadiums for the Brazil 2016 World Cup. 8 to 10 people. Why? Due to bad working conditions or accidental acts. Okay. The Qatar 2022 World Cup. A confirmed 1,000 people were killed in the midst of building for the Qatar 2022 World Cup. An American law firm, DLA Piper, confirmed the death of 1,000 people in the midst of only building, let alone 12. Other than that, FIFA, the organizing body of the World Cup, has been involved in several acts of embezzlement, bribery, personal abuse of power, and extortion. That's more than double the amount of people sitting here in this area right now. 1,000 people. Please look around that for a while.
And maybe you won't be able to relate to this example because you're not into sport. And that's perfectly fine. So let's take fashion as another example. The horrible conditions that these workers have to endure are similar to the conditions that sweatshop workers all over the world operate under. 2 years ago, for example, a Bangladeshi building containing 5 different factories collapsed. The factories were supposed to be exporting products to large Western names such as Walmart, Primark, and Benetton. The collapse killed 1,200 workers. 1,200 innocent workers. 1,200 innocent should have been evacuated the day before when large cracks began to appear in the building. The mere fact that we can simply compare incidents on this large scale and use the fatalities as a reference point is simply disgusting. Lives should not be taken this easily. And you want to know another horrible truth? Despite thinking that we abolished slavery many years ago, it has been present in our lives in several subtle forms. One of those forms is third-party ownership. Third-party ownership practice that takes place a lot in football. What TPO basically is, a player is divided into percentages, much like how a company is divided into shares. The percentages are then divided between the player himself, his club, and the third entity. The third entity could be a bank, a firm, or a supermarket, for all anyone cares. And it all depends on how much each person pays. Now, the problem with this is that under normal conditions, the transfer rights of the player, meaning who decides where exactly he goes, would lie between him and his club. But under TPO, the decision lies in the hand of whoever has paid the most, whoever has the highest percentage of the player. And this is why former vice chairman of the English Football Association, David Dean, once stated that this practice is akin to enslaving players. And it is, in fact, a modern variation of slavery. The players are hoarded all around the world, depending on who pays the most or how much an investment in them yields. It presents a notion or belief that goes against everything that football stands for. So let's take a look at David Beckham as an example. David Beckham is a player that almost everyone is aware of. He's a player that many people think he has it all. He does what he loves for a living. He's really famous. He has a loving family. And most importantly, he has a lot of money. But imagine if David Beckham was divided into parts. Imagine if David Beckham was divided into parts that were auctioned off all over the world depending on who pays the most. Imagine if David Beckham's moves from England to Spain, from Spain to the US, from the US to France. Imagine if all these moves were forced upon him. Imagine if his family didn't want to move, but were forced to do so because his owner said so. Now, wouldn't that taint your image of football? It would do to me. Luckily, David Beckham is a free man. But for Beckham, there's an enslaved player. A player who's sold around the world for profit and not for his skills. A player who has to move around the world and play for clubs that he doesn't want to play for just because his owner says so. A player who doesn't own enough of a percentage of himself to decide where he goes. Now, try and tell me that that is not slavery.
Quite similar to record labels. When a musician signs a binding contract with a record label, they are basically bound to be controlled by what the record label orders them to do. The musicians have no control over the music they play, what gets produced, or what they perform, or where they perform. The musician's freedom is controlled by the record label just because they signed a binding contract, which is initially as complex as ever just to get their music produced. The musician's freedom is exploited by the record label just because the organization has control over what they do. Another form of modern slavery.
So, when was football more important than freedom and rights? When was football life and death? You want to know the truth? The truth is, it wasn't. But money was and still is. Football has become this corrupt because of the money that we pay. It has become this corrupt because of the money that we pay to subscribe to the channels that broadcast the games. It has become this corrupt because of the money that we pay to buy our team's merchandise, and it has become this corrupt because of the money that we pay to buy tickets to go to the matches. We're not telling you that we are to blame for this, and we are definitely not telling you to boycott the sport, because I, for one, would definitely not do that. But what we are telling you, that we are all in fact a part of it, and we need to be aware of our role in it all.
To know what the idea is that we're not talking about sports. We're not talking about sports, we're not talking about fashion, we're not talking about, because all these aspects were just forms of distraction from the ever-present corruption in society. From politics to human rights, from economics to the environment, the world has become so corrupt to an extent that the forms of distraction from corruption are now more corrupt than ever. Do you know what the idea is? The idea is that we're not talking about corruption. We're talking about our ignorance, the fact that we are a part of what's happening around us and we don't know that. About the fact that we are actually part of the society that is so corrupt and we lack. Donald Rumsfeld once said, there are no knowns. These are things that we know. There are known unknowns. These we know we don't know. There are unknown unknowns. These are things that we don't know. Too theoretical? Let me take that from a business analogy. In risk management, a known is a risk that can be easily identified with results that are reliably predicted. In known unknowns, these are risks that can be easily identified with lack of knowledge of the results that it provides to the firm. But in unknown unknowns, these are risks that cannot be even identified. Risks that the firm doesn't know it has, risks that the business lacks knowledge of. But then when I got to think about my known unknowns and my unknown unknowns, at first I thought about my known unknowns. I thought about Big Bang Theory, God, things that I know it won't happen. I literally had nothing to think about. The idea was just out of my scope of thought that I just fit there. Unknown unknowns. These are things that I don't know. Take the example of sports corruption. To some of us, we knew sports was corrupt. We knew everything that happened behind the scenes. And we had knowledge of the corruption that sports provided in everyday lives. To others of us, we knew sports was corrupt, but lacked knowledge of everything that happened behind the scenes. But to most of us, we knew nothing. We knew nothing of the fact that sports was as corrupt as ever. But then I found out that unknown unknowns are relative. An unknown unknown to me might be a known unknown to you.
And the known unknown to me might be an unknown unknown to you.
Unknown to me might be a known unknown to Bahar. But then when I got to think about that, you know the sausage theory that we discussed earlier? Yeah, I thought about that too. Yeah, it's wrong. The real sausage theory was actually said by Otto von Bismarck, Germany's prime minister in the 19th century. It stated, the less about how politics is, the better they sleep at night. When I thought about that quote, I thought about my unknown unknowns. I thought that it's not just being more knowledgeable. It's not just looking around me and finding out stuff that happens in my society. It's about the idea that there are forces that are actually stopping me from doing so. There are forces that are actually hindrance, obstacles, walls that are stopping me from knowing what they don't want me to know. So it's not about being more knowledgeable. It's about that we have to explore, we have to inquire, we have to traverse, we have to think from an abstract perspective.
We must not take anything for granted. We must search for answers. We must become inquisitive.
And then, and only then, will we let our unknowns be known. Thank you.
embarked on Ali Dawood's journey of self-discovery.
خلوني ارجع بحياتي سنتين. خلوني ارجع بحياتي سنتين. انسان حياته ملهاش لازمه، ما كنتش عارف هو ايه هدفي بالظبط. كان طول الوقت نفسي اهلي يعاملوني كاني بني ادم كبير، بس المعامله دي انا ما كنتش استحقها. كنت طول الوقت اروح اكلم امي تعاملني كاني لسه طفل صغير. كل مره ابص في عيون ابويا احس ان عمره ما هيقدر يعتمد عليا. طب مش مهم اهلي دلوقتي. خروجاتي مع اصحابي كان ليها سبب واحد بس، اللي انا بدور على نفسي في عيونهم. مره كوره، مره سباحه، مره سكواش، مره تنس. كان كل دول ابواب بخشهم بس عشان اطلع من الناحيه الثانيه. وتبقى كل مره فتره ثانيه من حياتي ضاعت بدون لازمه. مش هنسى في 2009 رحت على امي بعيط لها بقول لها لازم اتدرب كوره، مش عارف اتبسط مع الناس، مش عارف اتبسط مع اصحابي. بس قالت لي مش مهم، انت ممكن تبقى احسن في حاجه ثانيه. لحد مارس 2012 رحله غطس مع المدرسه زي اي رحله قبل كده، طلعت بس عشان الدرجات. هدفي الرحله دي اتغير تماما مع اول مره نزلت فيها تحت المايه. ديب فليت، الكلمه اللي بتسمعها من الجايد بتاعك عشان تسيب وراك دنيا مليانه مشاكل وحقد وتكبر، لدنيا المعنى الوحيد فيها سيبه، لدنيا كل واحد فيها محتاج التاني عشان يعيش، كل واحد فيها ليه لازمه، من اول الشهر منه لحد النيمو اللي بنقعد نضحك عليها لما نشوفها في التلفزيون. تحت الميه او في الرحله دي انا حسيت بشعور عمري ما كنت حسيته قبل كده. احساس العده وانا بلبسها، احساس الماسك ما بيخلينيش ابص ولا يمين ولا شمال، بس ببص قدامي بس. احساس ان انا مش سامع اي حد ولا اي حاجه غير صوت هوايا انا. تحت الميه انا كنت ملك نفسي. تحت الميه ما كانش في حد بيتحكم فيا او بيحكم عليا على اساس الدرجات اللي انا بجيبها، على اساس انا بعرف العب كوره ولا لا. تحت الميه الوحيد اللي كان بيتحكم فيا كان هو انا. عدى اول وثاني وثالث ورابع وخامس يوم، للاسف جه الوقت اللي لازم نرجع فيه تاني القاهره. جه الوقت اللي الباب اتفتح لي ابتدى يتقفل مره ثانيه. حياتي اللي كنت طول الوقت بحاول اهرب منها ابتدت ترجع لي تاني واحده واحده. ولحد دلوقتي عدت بقيه السنه ما خسرتش فيها ولا مره. وجه الصيف وعدى الصيف وبرضه ما خسرتش ولا مره. لحد ما تقدمت لنا فكره الكاس اللي هي طبعا اثبتنا كلنا في الحياه. كريتيفيتي اللي هي اصلا مش موجوده عندي. اكشن، كنت انسان انتوخ بيقعد بس في بيته عشان ياكل ويشرب. وسيرفيس اللي كنت بعملها بس عشان اشغل وقتي. سالت نفسي اعمل ايه؟ السؤال ده انا بساله لنفسي كل فتره عشان اتاكد انا مين، هدفي بالظبط، وانا رايح على فين. بسبب السؤال ده انضميت لمجموعه اسمها اي دايف تراي. مجموعه افتخر اني اقول اللي انا فرد فيها. مجموعه غيرت هدف الغطس بالنسبه لي تماما. الغطس بالنسبه لنا ما بقتش هوايه بس بقى واجب علينا. والبحر بالنسبه لنا بقى هو بيتنا التاني. مع المجموعه دي او بسبب الغطس انا بقيت انسان تاني تماما. انسان واثق في نفسه في تعامله مع الناس. انسان لقى الحاجه اللي بتميزه. انسان لما بيبص في عيون امه وابوه بيحس ان هم فخورين بيه. بس الاهم من ده كله انسان لقى معنى السعاده في الحياه. بعد ما انضميت للمجموعه دي قريت كتاب كان قد كده، طبعا كان اول واخر كتاب اقراه في حياتي. كتاب اسمه Elephant Whisperer. بيتكلم على راجل بينقذ الفئر عشان مين؟ حياه اصحاب الارض بقت في ازمه. طبعا في فرق كبير قوي ما بين الفيل
والسمكه، بس كانت السمكه هي الحاجه اللي انا اقدر انقذها. سلاحف بقى هو الاسم اللي انا معروف بيه دلوقتي في وسط اصحابي. ده لما انضميت للبروجكت تبع اي دايت ترايب، هدفه اننا ننقذ السلاحف من الانقراض. في الاول انا كنت فاكرها تريقه، بس ما همنيش اي حاجه من الكلام ده، عشان مع كل سلحفاه كنت بشوفها ترجع الميه كنت بحس بسعاده غير طبيعيه. السلحفاه هي حاجه بسيطه في وسط بيئه كبيره قوي. خلوني اقول لكم مثال كنت سمعته قبل كده. اذا كنت تظن حقا ان البيئه اقل اهميه من الاقتصاد، فجرب ان تعد اموالك بدون ان تتنفس. خلوني اشرح لكم الكود ده. في الانسان اللي معاه فلوس كتيره قوي، وفي الولد اللي صايع في وسط شلته، وفي الولد اللي بيجيب درجات عاليه قوي كل الناس بتيجي تطلب منه مساعده. بس ازاي الثلاثه دول هيعيشوا لو مفيش اصلا بيئه؟ لو مفيش الاكسجين اللي احنا هنتنفسه في الهواء. انتوا عارفين ان 70% من الاكسجين اللي احنا بنتنفسه دلوقتي جاي لنا اصلا من حياه الحيوان. برضه مش مهم الحيوان. زي ما قلت لكم قبل كده، البحر بالنسبه للغطاسين هو بيتهم التاني. فتخيل الواحد بيحس بايه مع كل حاجه بيشوفها مرميه تحت بيته، بيشوفها مرميه في بيته. تخيلوا احنا كغطاسين بنحس بايه مع كل حاجه بنشوفها مرميه تحت الميه، سواء كانت كان او كيس او علبه سجاير او السيجاره نفسها. كل واحد فينا عنده الحاجه اللي بتميزه. كل واحد فينا عنده الحاجه اللي هيفيد بيها المجتمع وبيفيد بيها الناس. انا لقيت الحاجه دي، انا لقيت الغطس. الغطس بالنسبه لي بقى هو معنى سعادتي في الحياه، والبحر بالنسبه لي بقى هو بيتي التاني. عشان كده انا عندي ليكم طلب واحد بس النهارده: protect the ocean, protect the future. شكرا.
I left a very demanding job in management consulting for a job that was even more demanding: teaching. I went to teach 7th grade in the schools. And like any teacher, I made quizzes and tests, I gave out homework assignments. When the work came back, I calculated grades. What struck me was that IQ was not a difference between my best and my worst students. Some of my strongest performers did not have stratospheric IQ scores. Some of my smartest kids aren't doing so well. And that got me thinking, kind of things you need to learn in 7th grade math, sure, they're hard. Ratios, decimals, the area of a parallelogram. But these concepts are not impossible. And I was firmly convinced that every one of my students could learn the material if they worked hard and long enough. After several more years of teaching, I came to the conclusion that what we need in education is a much better understanding of students and learning from a motivational perspective, from a psychological perspective. In education, the one thing we know how to measure best is IQ. But what if doing well in school and in life depends on much more than your ability to learn quickly and easily? So I left the classroom and I went to graduate school to become a psychologist. I started studying kids and adults in all kinds of super challenging settings. And in every study, my question was, who is successful here and why? My research team and I went to West Point Military Academy. We tried to predict which cadets would stay in military training and which would drop out. We went to the National Spelling Bee and tried to predict which children would advance farthest in competition. We studied rookie teachers working in really tough neighborhoods, asking which teachers are still going to be here in teaching by the end of the school year. And of those, who will be the most effective at improving learning outcomes for their students? We partnered with private companies, asking which of these salespeople is going to keep their jobs and who's going to earn the most money. In all those very different contexts, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, it wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago, I started studying grit in the Chicago public schools. I asked thousands of high school juniors to take grit questionnaires, and then waited around more than a year to see who would graduate. Turns out that grittier kids were significantly more likely to graduate, even when I matched them on every characteristic I could measure. Things like family income, standardized achievement test scores, even how safe kids felt when they were at school. So it's not just at West Point or the National Spelling Bee that grit matters, it's also in school, especially for kids at risk for dropping out. To me, the most shocking thing about grit is how little we know, how little science knows about building it. Every day, parents and teachers ask me, how do I build grit in kids? What do I do to teach kids a solid work ethic? How do I keep them motivated for the long run? The honest answer is, I don't know. What I do know is that talent doesn't make you gritty. Our data show very clearly that there are many talented individuals who simply do not follow through on their commitments. In fact, in our data, grit is usually unrelated or even inversely related to measures of talent. So far, the best idea I've heard about building grit in kids is something called growth mindset. This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol Dweck, and is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with your effort. Dr. Dweck has shown that when kids read and learn about the brain and how it changes and grows in response to challenge, they're much more likely to persevere when they fail, because they don't believe that failure is a permanent. So growth mindset is a great idea for building grit, but we need more. And that's where I'm going to end my remarks, because that's where we are. That's the work that stands before us. We need to take our best ideas, our strongest intuitions, and we need to test them. We need to measure whether we've been successful, and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over again with lessons learned. In other words, we need to be gritty about getting our kids grittier. Thank you.
Now you want to experience real grit? Now check out this gold medalist, a gymnast, and a young ambitious 18-year-old who achieved more than she even thought she would. Please give it up for Aisha El Olani.
24. I didn't just randomly pick the number. To some of you, it may be a reminder of a certain date. Some of you might relate it age-wise. But to me, 24 is the number that represents the biggest victory of my life so far. 2 months ago, my team and I ranked on the top 35 teams in one of the biggest world championships in the world. And I'll tell you all about it. When I was 3, I was lucky enough to realize what my passion is, which is gymnastics. And unlike most of my teammates, my parents didn't force me into going to training every day. And even though I pretty much had no clue what gymnastics is, I really liked it. 2 years later, I won my very first gold medal. And from that moment on, I was determined to get as many medals as one could ever earn. So you know how life gets harder as you grow older and stuff? Well, tough isn't even close to describing it in gymnastics. As I got older, competition started getting harder. People whom I've never heard of started appearing out of nowhere, trying to beat me and trying to take my place. Challengers tried to fight me, they tried to beat me, and they tried to, but that was no way for me to back out, and I never did. Because let me tell you one thing, your goals become even more valuable to you when someone else is trying to take them away from you. So one of the worst phases of my life was when I was 14. We were maturing in the world of gymnastics, and competition was just terrible. Little did I know was that everything I was wishing for and everything I was working so hard for could all be lost in just a blink of an eye. Out of nowhere, I started feeling this very unusual pain in my leg. And because I ignored it, it was my way of pretending that it just wasn't there. But after a lot of endurance and a lot of suffering, I had to tell my coach. And from then on, all the complications just kept piling up. Little did I know, recovery was the hardest part of all. At that time, I lost. I had no idea where I stood. And at times, it just seemed impossible for me to get back up there. And hope slowly faded away. I lost all my sources of motivation, and everything just seemed impossible for me. Until one day, with the help of my 6 extraordinary teammates, we managed to get back up there. My injury was so serious, yet no doctor could accurately diagnose it. Their solution was so simple though, quit. But that was no option for me. A while later, my teammates and I, which are over there by the way, decided that we would go after the one thing we've been waiting for our entire lives. The one thing every athlete wishes to achieve, and the one thing that we know would bring us complete and utter satisfaction, the Olympics. So being rational, we thought that the best way to start off was to set up a meeting with our federation. But who are we, 6 girls, standing in the faces of one hell of a federation? And despite our various schedules, and the fact that 5 out of 6 girls had serious injuries that they couldn't endure every day, we were ready to start off right away. There was complete support from their board members, and we did get it, just not as soon as you think we did. So a while later, we started practicing, and by time, we were good enough to win first place in the All-African Championships. By then, we've earned their trust, and attention started creeping in. So our next step was to focus on what mattered the most, which was the World Championships, which, by the way, was our final shot at reserving a place for the Olympics. And having only 6 months left to train, which I know 6 months may seem like a lot of time, But compared to the other teams who've been training years and years for this kind of intensity and tension and stress, we were so far behind, and we had a lot of catching up to do. So we decided that we'd dedicate our 3 months of summer for training and training only. So I want you to imagine 8 hours of consecutive training every day, straight months. Our social lives were literally hanging by a thread, and our lives literally sucked. But we knew it would all be worth it at the very end. On the day of competition, as ready as we thought we were all dying from fear inside. By the time we were done, we were pretty hopeless. I mean, everyone was saying that we should be optimistic, but we were being more realistic, knowing that we would never rank from the top 24 countries. And while we just waited there, trying to accept the fact that it was all over, a guy came up to us and was like, "You guys know you still rank 21, right?" And that was when all the anxiety kept rushing back in, and that one tiny piece of hope that we thought we lost came back. And while we waited there for the scores to come out, and they did, all the happiness in the world was felt inside us. And with 0.1 difference in scores, my team and I ranked the top 24 out of 35 countries who qualified for the Olympic Games of Tokyo. The point is, people are going to push you down. They're going to mislead you, and they're going to tell you no a million times. My team and I overcame injuries, doctors, and a lot of discouragement. But we kept going anyway because we knew we'd get there one day. A friend of mine once told me success is where opportunity meets hard work. So you know what? Grab every opportunity you get and never let go.
Okay, guys. Now, I hope everyone enjoyed the session. We now have a 15-minute break. Please be here at 5:35 sharp. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Could you please have a seat? We want to start our last session for the evening. If everyone who's outside could please kindly join us, we're about to begin with the last session. Firstly, I would like to inform everyone about a magical corner in the back of this room where there is cookies, and as you can see by all of this around my wrist, the cookies come with ribbons, and you can tell how many I've eaten by the ribbons on my wrist. They're amazing. There are anonymous books in the back, which are basically books that are wrapped so that you can't judge the book based on its cover. So before you leave, you should visit the back corner. There are some amazing giveaways. Also, we have Dex's cards and keychains. Onward, Art is a multi-talented young woman. She is passionate about crochet. She is a university student. She is the CEO of Entrepreneur Society, and somehow, she still manages to keep up her business DB. And also, incidentally, she made this lovely scarf. So, one day, Haitham used to help around the house when I had a heart-to-heart. She told me about how she was originally from Fayoum, had no access to an education, and got married off at a young age. In her late 20s, simply because she was so keen on learning, she enrolled herself into a literacy program. At the end of our talk, Haitham told me just how much she hated cleaning. And at that I pulled up her next to me and taught her how to push. It isn't for me, it's for one of the people who pushes me forward, Haitham. But now I'll take you back to the start. Handicrafts were always an instrumental part of my upbringing. My mother, Faiza, or Faiza as I like to call her, was an avid crafter. Up until around the 1970s, sewing was a mandatory course in the school system. Most people found it very tedious and annoying, and simple was one. Because of this love, she decided to continue her course of study in the art section of her high school and later majored in home economics, while two of her brothers opted for engineering, the third economics, and her sister chemistry. Later on, Faiza got married and had 4 children. 4 years old, Faiza next to her and taught her how to cross-stitch for the first time. Later on, when my parents immigrated to Canada, my mother found solace in Hindi. There's an Egyptian proverb that roughly translates to flower. My mother tried to sweeten it stitch by stitch through her work. 9 years old, I heard her from far for quite some time. I knew what she was doing. At that point, again, she pulled up a chair, sat me next to her, and taught me how to crochet for the first time. I fell in love with the fact that by simply manipulating a piece of yarn, I could create a master. Nothing became more gratifying than somebody in front of me. For years, my mother now involved in bringing colors and music design. Later, 16 years old, my sister insisted that I make her a pillow for her. Now, being the rowdy teenager I was, I refused for quite some time, but finally, after some protest, I obliged. Later on, I made a pencil case for school and took it there. One day, my sister came home from work, all excited, telling me about how her co-workers were so impressed by the pillow and how they asked her where she got it from. They were equally surprised when she told them that her 15-year-old sister had made it. When I got a similar reaction from my colleagues at school, I realized something. There was demand for the products I made. At that point, without knowing a single thing about
branding, running a business, or anything remotely related to that, I decided to take the plunge and start a business. Now, over the course of 5 minutes, I became the CEO of my Facebook page, a very small milliliter in the vast space that is the internet. But despite how insignificant that was, and I enjoyed the title for it a little bit. Naturally, my business took a nosedive into a ditch. One thing you should know about handling goods is that hours and hours of careful work go into each piece. Now, I had underestimated just how labor-intensive it was, and having been an IB student and constantly bombarded with essays and exams, I decided to shut my business down just as quickly as I had started it. This whole time, I was wishing that I could start my business again, but I kept making things on the side because I loved it. Until one day, one of my teachers sent me an entrepreneurship program. At this point, I had no idea what those 16 letters meant, even though Google search warranted that it meant the process of starting a business. Today, I know that it's much more than that, but at the time, it represented an opportunity to me, and I decided to go for it. Now, learning that word really showed me what I was trying to be, an entrepreneur. It really gave me a new outlook. Entrepreneurship began representing something much bigger to me. It began representing the solution to many problems we have, like unemployment or over-reliance on foreign aid. I began thinking of what I called the entrepreneurial solution. At this point, I remembered that spark in Mama Haisam's eyes when she first completed a crochet project. I remember just how excited she was. Later on, I found out by sheer coincidence that Mama Haisam had taught her two sisters, Hagar and Mahmoud. And I began reflecting on the pre-industrial revolution days when the economy was dominated by cottage industry. The textile industry, in particular, was dependent on women who would work from home and support each other through their communities. At this point, I had a totally new outlook on my business, a new model that I could implement. But this whole time, I didn't do anything about it. Until one day, I was constantly walking around campus after having graduated, started my college career, and I found something called Entrepreneur Society. Now, in one sentence, Entrepreneur Society is the foremost student movement in our ecosystem, in the entrepreneurship ecosystem here. And Entrepreneur Society really facilitated the relaunch of DD, my business. It reaffirmed something to me that I don't have to do what society tells me. I don't have to graduate and get a high-paying job with good benefits. I can be the one to create the jobs. I can do something on my own terms. DD represents a very, very small example of just what entrepreneurship can do. It's a very small model. Today, I'm 20 years old. I have a nearly scripted service. I have implemented that college industry idea that I had. But I was lucky to have first found my passion at age 9 when I first had the crochet hook. And again, at age 15, when I learned the hardest word ever to spell, entrepreneurship. Over the years, I saw that very small moments can come together to make something bigger. Sometimes all it takes is pulling up a chair and sitting down and having the willingness to learn something totally new, even if you're going to be called a grandma for it. I learned that it's good to start young and never stop.
I know that last talk was really exciting, but if you could all stay in your seats. All right, this next speaker is an extremely talented young man. He's a graffiti artist, or as he likes to call himself, a visual terrorist. And personally, this is one of my favorite talks, so please listen attentively and give it up for Stephen Daisy.
اهلا في عطل في النص. عامة أنا عايز أبتدي بسؤال. عايز أسألكم سؤال. السؤال هو إحنا ليه بنتفنن؟ إحنا بنتفنن عشان إحنا جزء من الإنسانية، والإنسانية مليانة روح. فالطب والهندسة، دكتوراه وقانون، كلهم شغلانات ومجالات تعتبر أساسية في مجتمعنا الحالي. بس الفن حاجة تانية. أنا اسمي سليم ميسي وبيتقال عليا فيجوال تيرست. هو ده سلاحي اللي أنا عملته بيه. اللي شفته قبل ما نشوفك يدعوني عليك لأيام دلوقتي أنا عارف إن دي حاجة بسيطة، بس تخيلوا إن دي كانت على حيطة هنا في مصر. دلوقتي أنا عايز آخد فوت، عايز كل اللي شايف اللي أنا عملته ده أو نوع من بس ممكن اقول ان دلوقتي وجهه نظري انا ده فورم اوف اكسبرشن هو الاصح. ففي بدايه ما بينهم هو ده اللي كتير من الناس بيتلخبطوا فيه. فطول ما احنا ماشيين في الشارع على الدائري او المحور عامه بنلاقي كذا كذا خاين او فلان عميل، وساعات اوحش من كده. انا ما بقولش ان هو كده، انا بس بقول ان مش من حق اي جرافيتي ارتست ان هو يسيب ويشتم في شغله. عادة الناس المجبره ان هي تشوف شغله كل يوم وهي رايحه الشغل. فخلينا متفقين ان السب وشغال زي في اي حاجه مش مقبوله عامه، بالذات ان احنا شعب محافظ لدرجه ما. هيجي حد يقول لي بس زي ما انت قلت الجرافيتي مجبر علينا، عارفين يرد عليه؟ اقول له ايه؟ اساله سؤال، اقول له طب كل اعلانات اللي انت بتشوفها كل يوم في حياتك دي هل هي مجبره علينا احنا كمان؟ عمر ما جه حد سالك بعد اذنك ممكن نحط اعلان ماكدونالدز على المحور؟ لا ما فيش. بالعكس بشويه كوبي رايتس وانتلكشوال بروبرتي تقوم حاطط الاعلان، ولو عمرك فكرت بس ان انت ترسم عليه تشخبط عليه تقطعه حتى ممكن يزوق ويرفع عليك قضيه كمان. The advertisers they owe you. They rearrange the world you live in to put themselves in front of you. They never ask for your permission, so don't start asking for theirs. كما قال الفنان الكبير بانكسي. بانكسي من رموز الجرافيتي ارتست العالميه المشهورين عامه. كتير منكم ممكن تكونوا سمعتوا عن شغله او شفت شغله حتى. بانكسي حقق اللي اي جرافيتي ارتست كان يعوز ان هو يحققه. انا ما بتكلمش عن ريكوجنيشن، انا بتكلم ان هو عرف يوصل رساله، عرف يخلي الجرافيتي فعلا فورم اوف اكسبريشن، عرف يوصل رسالته للغني او الفقير ايا كان الانسان. ودي عامه مشكله كبيره بنواجهها هنا في مصر، ان الارت اصبح بريفليج للاغنياء فقط. يعني انتوا مثلا متخيلين ان يجي واحد بيقبض قد كده في الشهر يا دوبك يكفي مصاريف البيت ومصاريف العيله، ينزل ياخد مواصله يروح بيها لغايه الزمالك عشان يقعد يلف في الزمالك يبص على الارت في الارت جاليريز؟ لا طبعا، بصراحه اللي شايف كده ما يبقاش شايف خالص. دي عامه ليها حل، والجرافيتي هو الحل بتاعها. ان هو مثلا واقف في المواصله لسه هيروح الشغل او بتاع، هيبص على الحته هيلاقي الفن قدامه، هنكون احنا كده وصلنا الفن في حياته ووصلنا لرساله. مشكله ثانيه انا بصراحه زعلتني هي الفن اللي حصل في وقت 25 يناير. هو فين دلوقتي؟ 50 60 70% منه اتشال واتشطب وشويه من الفن حتى اتهدد. ليه؟ لان الناس مش مقدرين قيمه الفنانين، مش مقدرين الفنانين اللي نزلوا وضحوا بحياتهم في وسط الضرب والمشاكل اللي كانت بتواجهها البلد عشان يكتبوا تاريخهم، تاريخنا احنا على احضاننا بايديهم. بس يعني ده بقى شيء عادي عامة. أنا مثلا أكون قاعد في البيت وأهلي عامة عاملين عزومة ولا حاجة وكل كبار العيلة جايين، وألاقي مثلا تالتة وأنكل يقولوا لي ها حبيبي حسيت أين ما تكبر مهندس ولا دكتور؟ أقول لهم أنا عايز أطلع فنان. يروح باصين لي كده يقولوا لي تقصد أركتك؟ أقول لهم لا أنا عايز أطلع فنان. وألاقي نفسي اتسحلت في ديسكشن طويلة عن الفنانين ما يقدروش يسبورتوا عيلة وما لهمش برستيج في المجتمع والكلام اللي كلنا عارفينه ده. انا عامه يعني الموضوع ده انتهى من ساعه ما انا عرفت اثبت لاهلي ان انا ممكن اجيب شغلانات من ورا الموضوع ده وسافرت بره اجل الارت وكده. انا كان هدفي من التيد توك ده ان الناس تبتدي تقدر الفن، تقدر الفن والفنانين ايا كان اشكاله، مش بس عشان هو شكله حلو، بس عشان الرسائل المتنوعه اللي فيه. الفن ده هو تعبنا وقصتنا وتاريخنا، الفن ده هو عيشتنا. شكرا.
Not good enough. Hello, TED women, what is up? My name is Mason Zayed, and I am not drunk, but the doctor who delivered me was. He cut my mom 6 different times in 6 different directions, suffocating poor little me in the process. As a result, I have cerebral palsy, which means I shake all the time. Look. It's exhausting. I'm like Shakira meets Muhammad Ali. CP is not genetic. It's not a birth defect. You can't catch it. No one put a curse on my mother's uterus, and I didn't get it because my parents are first cousins, which they are. It only happens from accidents, like what happened to me on my birthday. Now, I must warn you, I'm not inspirational. And I don't want anyone in this room to feel bad for me. In your life, you have dreamt of being disabled. Come on a journey with me. It's Christmas Eve. You're at the mall. You're driving around in circles looking for parking. And what do you see? 16 empty handicap spaces. And you're like, God, can't I just be a little disabled? Palsy is just one. If there was an oppression Olympics, I would win the gold medal. I'm Palestinian, Muslim, I'm female, I'm disabled, and I live in New Jersey. If you don't feel better about yourself, maybe you should. Because Park, New Jersey is my hometown. I have always loved the fact that my hood and my affliction share the same initials. I also love the fact that if I wanted to walk from my house to New York City, I could. A lot of people with CP don't walk, but my parents didn't believe in can't. My father's mantra was, you can do it. Yes, you can. So, if my 3 older sisters were mopping, my 3 older sisters went to public school, my parents would sue the school system and guarantee that I went too. And if we didn't all get A's, we all got my mother's slipper. My father taught me how to walk when I was 5 years old by placing my heels on his feet and just walking. Another tactic that he used is he would dangle have me chase it. My inner is strong, and talking like a champ who had been punched one too many times. Growing up, there were only 6 Arabs in my town, and they were all my family. Now there are 20 Arabs in town, and they are still all my family. I don't think anyone even noticed we weren't Italian. This was before 9/11 and before politicians thought it was appropriate to use "I hate Muslims" as a campaign slogan. The people that I grew up with had no problem with my faith. They did, however, seem very concerned that I would starve to death during Ramadan. I would explain to them that I have enough fat to live off of for 3 whole months, so fasting from sunrise to sunset is a piece of cake. I have tap danced on Broadway. Yeah, on Broadway. It's crazy. My parents couldn't afford physical therapy, so they sent me to dancing school. I learned how to dance in heels, which means I can walk in heels. And I'm from Jersey, and we are really concerned with being chic. So if my friends wore heels, so did I. And when my friends went and spent their summer vacations on the Jersey Shore, I did not. I spent my summers in a war zone because my parents were afraid that if we didn't go back to Palestine every single summer, we'd grow up to be Madonna. Summer vacations often consisted of my father trying to heal me. So I drank deer's milk, I had hot cups on my back, I was dunked in the Dead Sea, and I remember the water burning my eyes and thinking, it's working! But one miracle cure we did find was yoga. I have to tell you, it's very boring. But before I did yoga, I was a stand-up comedian who can't stand up. And now I can stand on my head. My parents reinforced this notion that I could do anything, that no dream was impossible. And my dream was to be on the daytime soap opera at General Hospital. I went to college during affirmative action and got a sweet scholarship to ASU, Arizona State University, because I fit every single quota. I was like the pet lemur of the theater department. Everybody loved me. I did all the less than intelligent kids' homework. I got A's in all my classes, A's in all their classes. Every time I did a scene from the lesson, we never got cast. Finally, my senior year, ASU decided to do a show called They Dance Real Slow in Jackson. It's a play about a girl with CP. I was a girl with CP. So I start shouting from the rooftops, I'm finally getting hit hard. I have cerebral palsy. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God almighty, I'm free at last. I didn't get the part. Sherry Brown got the part. I went racing to the head of the theater department, crying hysterically like someone shot my cat, to ask her why. Because they didn't think I could do the stunts. I said, excuse me, if I can't do the stunts, neither can the character. This was a part that I was literally born to play, and they gave it to a non-palsy actress. Collins was imitating life. Hollywood has a sordid history of casting able-bodied actors to play disabled on screen. Upon graduating, I moved back home, and my first acting gig was as an extra on the daytime soap opera. My dream was coming true, and I knew that I would be promoted from diner to wacky best friend in no time. But instead, I remained a glorified piece of furniture that you could only recognize from the back of my head. And it became clear to me that casting directors didn't hire fluffy ethnic disabled actors. They only hired perfect people. But there were exceptions to the rule. I grew up watching Whoopi Goldberg, Roseanne Barr, Ellen, and all these women had one thing in common. They were comedians. So I became a comic. My first gig was driving famous comics from New York City to shows in New Jersey at the face of the first comic I ever drove when he realized that he was speeding down the New Jersey Turnpike with a chick with CP driving it. I performed in clubs all over America, and I've also performed in Arabic in the Middle East, uncensored and uncovered. Some people say I'm the first stand-up comic in the Arab world. I never like to claim first, but I do know that they never heard that nasty little rumor that women aren't funny and they find us hysterical. In 2003, my brother from another mother and father, Dino Vidala, and I started the New York Arab American Comedy Festival, now in its 10th year. Our goal was to change the negative image of Arab Americans in media, while also reminding casting directors that South Asian and Arab are not synonymous. Mainstreaming Arabs was much easier than conquering the challenge against the stigma against disability. My big break came in 2010. I was invited to be a guest on the cable news show Countdown with Keith Olbermann. I walked in looking like I was going to the prom, and they shuffle me into a studio and seat me on a spinning rolling chair. So I looked at the stage manager and I'm like, excuse me, can I have another chair? And she looked at me and she went, 5, 4, 3, 2, and so I had to grip onto the anchor's desk so that I wouldn't roll off the screen during the segment. And when the interview was over, I was livid. I had finally gotten my chance, I blew it, and I knew I would never get invited back. But not only did Mr. Olbermann invite me back, he made me a full-time contributor and he taped down my chair. One fun fact I learned while on the air with Keith Olbermann was that humans on the internet are scumbags. People say children are cruel, but I was never made fun of as a child or an adult. Suddenly my disability on the World Wide Web is fair game. I would look at clips online and see comments like, yo, why is she tweaking? Yo, is she retarded? And my favorite, poor Gumby mouth terrorist, what does she suffer from? We should really pray for her. One commenter even suggested that I add my disability to my credits. Screenwriter, comedian, palsy. Disability is as visual as race. If a wheelchair user can't play Beyonce, then Beyonce can't play a wheelchair user. The disabled are the largest. Yeah, clap for them, man. Come on. People with disabilities are the largest minority in the world, and we are the most underrepresented in entertainment. The doctor said I wouldn't walk, but I am here in front of you. However, if I grew up with social media, I don't think I would be. I hope that together we can create more positive images of disability in the media and in everyday life. Perhaps if there were more positive images, it would foster less hate on the internet. Or maybe not. Maybe it still takes a village to teach our children well. My crooked journey has taken me to some very spectacular places. I got to walk the red carpet, flanked by soap divas Susan Lucci and the iconic Lorraine Arbus. I got to act in a movie with Adam Sandler and work with my idol, the amazing Dave Matthews. I toured the world as a headliner on Arabs Gone Wild. I was a delegate representing at the TC, a charity that gives health and butterfly and thinks it could be, has Parkinson's and shakes just like me. Muhammad. It was the only time that my father ever saw me perform live, and I dedicate this talk to his memory. Allah yarhamak yaba. My name is Maysoon Zayed, and if I can, you can.
To reflect on that talk, that was hilarious, and at the same time, it was really inspiring. It's beautiful. And another speaker that will be talking about creatively solving solutions and representation is Ahmed Al-Feda. He is an inspiring, passionate activist, and it's contagious the way he cares about helping people. So please put your hands together for him.
عايز اقول لكم معلومه صغيره. مروحه الكمبيوتر بسيطه. المروحه دي بسببها اكتر من 500 واحد سافروا البلد في حرب عشان يساعدوا الناس يوصلوا رساله انسانيه. مروحه زي دي ازاي ممكن تعمل حاجه زي كده؟ خليني اقول لكم. قصه المروحه بدات لما ابويا احتاج ان انا كبرت بعد 7 سنين وما ينفعش اقضي وقت في الصيف ان انا العب بس. قرر ساعتها ان انا اشتغل معاه في مصنع واعمل المروحه. في الحقيقه في الاول الموضوع ما كنتش عاجبني جدا، بالعكس كنت كارهه جدا. لدرجه ان انا ساعات كنت بفكر ابلغ عنه فوق الطفل. بس وجودي في المكان ده في السن ده علمني اتعامل مع عمال وناس غالبا ما كنتش عارف اتعامل معاهم بعدين. سوري. الموضوع اتطور ومبقاش مروحه وبس، بقيت بخرج مع العمال مهندسين بره زيارات مصانع بيئة. الموضوع كان لذيذ، كانت تجربه مختلفه، بس ساعات كنت بضطر اكذب. زي ما في يوم دخلت هيئه حكوميه عندهم الجهاز بتاعنا بايظ وكان المفروض اصلحه، فدخلت على رئيسه الهيئه مهندسه كبيره في السن، بصيت لي كده بدله، انت في سنه كام؟ انا كان عندي 14 سنه، بس قلت لها ثانيه جامعه، ثانيه هندسه. هي صدقت الحمد لله، بس قالت لي كنت ابوك جايبك عشان تجرب فينا بقى. الكلمه دي استفزتني جدا، وقررت يوميها ان انا هصلح الجهاز، والحمد لله على اخر اليوم الجهاز كان اتحرق. لما رجعت المصنع تاني وحكيت لبابايا على اللي حصل، بص لي قال لي انت كان لازم تحرق الجهاز عشان تتعلم. يوميها عرفت حاجه مهمه جدا، ان لازم كل ما هاخد فرصه لازم هفشل، بس كل ما هاخد فرصه عشان انجح فيها لازم كان في الاول افشل فعلا. ودي ما كانتش اخر مره افشل فيها، فشلت تاني لما دخلت الجامعه. اول سنه ليا في الجامعه ما كانش لاقي اي حاجه، اي اكتيفيتيز او نشاطات، بس اخويا جه قال لي خش حاجه اسمها ستودنت سينيت او مجلس الطلاب. مجلس الطلاب كنت عارف عنه اي حاجه، المفروض انزل انتخابات. دخلت الانتخابات، حظي الحلو ما كانش في مرشح قدامي فكسبت. من تاني لقيت نفسي في مكان غريب ما اعرفش عنه اي حاجه، بس بتعامل مع طلبه اكبر مني، مع عمال، مع اداره، مع دكاتره، بنحل مشاكل اكبر مني بكتير. فبالنسبه لي اول سنه دي كانت تجربه مختلفه اتعلمت فيها كتير. تاني سنه الموضوع لما عجبني قررت ان انا انزل اترشح تاني. ساعتها نزل قدامي مرشح يوم مرات، ورغم ان انا فشلت ساعتها بس ما زعلتش، مش عارف ليه بصراحه، بس ما زعلتش خالص. وقررت ان انا هكمل في الجامعه اعمل اللي كنت بعمله وقت ما كنت في المجلس من غير منصب، من غير ما يكون اسمي في المجلس فعلا. وفي يوم واحد صاحبي جه حكى لي على مشكله بسببها ممكن الناس تترفض فعلا من الجامعه. فرحت اتكلمت مع رئيس المجلس وقلت له على المشكله، وقال لي ان هو عنده اجتماع مع نائب رئيس الجامعه بعد يومين، ممكن اطلع معاه. طلعت معاه بس هو ما جاش، كان في حد غيري. دخلت عرفت نفسي، حليت المشكله الحمد لله وطلعت. وساعتها يوميها انا مش محتاج لقب ومش محتاج منصب عشان احل اللي انا عايزه. يوم ما هشتغل عشان اساعد الناس، ناس هتساعدني عشان اشتغل لهم. بعدها بسنه جيت انتخابات جديده، اتحاد طلبه جديد، وساعتها الناس عرضوا عليا ان انا اشتغل في الاتحاد ده. قررت ان انا ادخل الاتحاد واخد الفرصه. دخلت الاتحاد اول الصيف واجهت مشكله انسانيه، ناس بتموت في بلد. ساعتها قررنا ان احنا نعمل حمله طبيه نطلع البلد. اتكلمنا في الاول بمعارفنا، اتصلنا بزملائنا لاتحادات الجامعات الخاصه، قررنا ان احنا نعمل حمله للطلاب جمع تبرعات للمساعدات. بعد شويه جم ناس اتصلوا بينا قالوا ان في حمله شعبيه بتعمل نفس المساعدات. فدخلنا معاهم بنحمل واحده كبيره بتجمع المساعدات. بعديها قررنا نعمل قافله للبشر تطلع توصل المساعدات دي بنفسها. طلعنا من اكثر من 500 واحد وصلنا المساعدات. رغم ان دي كانت حته كبيره قوي في حياتي مهمه جدا، بس ما حسيتش النهارده ان هي دي دي اكبر حاجه انا عملتها. النهارده انا واقف قدامكم، يعني الاسبوع اللي فات حسيت ان القافله دي وصلت لي حاجه اكبر بكتير. الاسبوع اللي فات في الجامعه عندنا في عمال بتوع مزرعه معتصمين ومتظاهرين في الجامعه عشان الجامعه تديهم مزرعه. يوميها لقيت طلاب اول مره اشوفهم، طلاب في اول سنه واقفين مع عمال بيطالبوا بحقوقهم. طلاب في سنه اولى جايين بقالهم اسبوع على الارض جنب العمال عشان يساعدوهم معنويا انهم يكملوا ويطالبوا بحقوقهم. الطلبه دول عملوا كده بسبب حاجه واحده، ان هم اخذوا الفرصه وطلعوا قافله ولقوا انهم مجرد يساعدوا الناس معنويا هيوصلوا. احنا في الاول كنا 3 في الاتحاد لما قررنا ان احنا نعمل حمله. كل واحد باللي يعرفه ومعارفه يقدر يوصل لاكثر من 500 واحد ما يعرفوش بعض وما نعرفهمش عشان يوصلوا رساله في بلد فيها حرب عشان يوصلوا مساعدات. وانا كواحد من القافله او واحد من ال3 اللي خلاني ادخل القافله اللي كنت في الاتحاد، اللي دخلت عشان بحب المجلس، اللي حبيته بسبب ان انا كنت شغال مع بابايا عشان مجرد اعمل المروحه دي. شكرا.
combined mental and physical effort of people. And if I had to thank every person name by name, I'd be here for hours. So I'll make this very, very brief. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the people who this event was made for and who made this event happen, the speakers. I am nothing but proud to have worked for you over the past period of time. I'd also like to thank the organizing committee, from chef to chief, from everyone from the backstage team to the logistics team, to the finance team, to everyone. And I'd like to thank our sponsors, our main organizer, my second home, High International Academy. Our main sponsor, Pepsi, and our other sponsors, Rich Nick and Solid Culture. And I'd like to thank one person in particular, the godmother of this event, the person who this event would not have been without Lurito. And lastly, I would like to tell you a little story. The story about why I lost my voice. I lost my voice over the past couple of days.